Hey, Spellground fans, Japji Khalsa here. I want to tell you about something fun that you're about to see. It is an interview that I did back in January before COVID hit with Jeff Brain, who is one of the co-founders of Khalsa Brain Games. And in this interview, it goes at its own pace. So sit back, relax, and hear a little bit about the history of Khalsa Brain Games, how we made the mats, what happened after, and what we're each doing after that too. So it should be pretty fun. Enjoy.
Okay, so 1993, what was I doing then? Well, living in San Francisco and recently married, and was always into games. So Dungeons and Dragons, and then board games, more complex board games. This was before the Euro game invasion, so to speak. But saw people in a coffee shop playing a card game and became curious, and it was Magic the Gathering. And shortly thereafter, one of the card players was Japji. Met him, and I'm a kind of gregarious guy. He's a gregarious guy. We got along pretty well, and I started playing Magic. And we came to a realization early on. Both of us kind of had an epiphany. We should be protecting these cards. They're, of course, at that time we had no idea that the secondary market was going to explode as it continues to do. So we kicked around some ideas and started this concept of, gee, we could. And I had a background as a screen printer. I had done a lot of screen printing work in my earlier days, and hand painted on fabric, just like this shirt. So I had a lot of familiarity with working with fabric and screen printing and the capabilities. So we came up with some sketches and so forth, and Khalsa Brain Games was born. And to originally design playmats for Magic the Gathering, and of course collectible card games. So I remember the big arguments was, how do you spell collectible? we went around and around and around about collectible. What was the name of the thing? We had names like Battleground and Battle Mats, and all these different names. Spellground was a genius. I have no idea if that was Japji or me or just part of the brainstorm process, but Spellgrounds and Khalsa Brain Games. So there you go.
I love it. So the memory I have is that I had bought this piece of fabric across the street at Discount Fabrics and put it on the table and started playing on it. And then you walked up and said, hey, I could draw a picture for that. Do you remember that?
I vaguely. But yeah, again, it's this idea that whenever I see fabric, I think printing. So that's... it wouldn't surprise me if I said, wow, we should put a design on that or something. Yeah. And that's, again, this having a background in working with fabric and screen printing, I knew it was possible. And I know and there's some stories within stories when it comes to the printing process and all that.
Do you, speaking of the printing process, do you have a story from how we started printing? What was our
Sure.
first? How did we find that printer and move forward?
Well, the first printer we had was a screen printer. A friend of mine from my gaming group,
I forgot about that. Yeah.
My Dungeons and Dragons group, a guy named Jody Chappell, worked as a screen printer in West Oakland. So we hired him to do the first 100 two-player Spellgrounds. And Jody's still around, but he was not really capable of doing things in a timely fashion at that time. So we found a real screen printer. Interestingly enough, 3 blocks away from where I live now in San Francisco. My wife and I rode our bikes right by it. It's now an HVAC supply place, but it was a screen printer that was able to handle the volume because we had a tiger by the tail, and we knew it immediately that this was, for a startup, it was like, wow, this is successful, and so that was an interesting process in ramping it up that way. And Japji is a good businessman. I'd done some freelance work. So.
How did you see the partnership? That's some of my questions. How did you see that partnership in terms of the strengths and qualities, and how did you each work together?
Oh, well, it's, I was the artist and Japji was everything else. Not entirely, but that was really the breakdown and of duties. And I was teaching full time at during that whole period. So I was teaching full time, recently married, and so we stuck together for a few years. I guess 4 years, something like 3 or 4 years. But it became apparent that if I was going to have a family, we'd have to get going on that, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was a very amicable breakup. It's like, Japji, I can't do this. And it was around that time that Japji also we put on 2 mini conventions, Manifest, and they were successful. And it was obvious Japji had a passion for putting on events, and event management is a very complicated task and not a good thing for someone who is about to become a father. So that was part of where we parted ways, and I occasionally did some work for Japji for the company Khalsa Brain Games over the course of time, but mostly I'd run into Japji at gaming conventions, and we'd play cards and play games, which we still do to this day.
The original Spellground design is so iconic. How do you, what went into that design for you? I mean, I'm sure you and I collaborated and came up with ideas, but do you remember any of the specific elements that just, kicked in?
Well, it's funny. It just seemed to flow naturally. It was, okay, we wanted a library, wanted a graveyard, so, create something along those lines. Magic, magic stuff, the goblet, kind of a potion idea. I knew a lot about copyright law from my work as a teacher and working with technology. So I wanted to make sure that we weren't copying any of the current Magic cards or anything like that. So wanted to make sure everything was original. But the fun part was the middle of the Spellground, the what we called the Wanga, and it's gone through some transformations over time, but that became something that Manifest was part of the pins, and then later, over the course of 4 or 5 years, it evolved. But that centerpiece, which was just a geometric something that I came up with, turned out to have lasting value, so to speak. It was repeated. We repeated it, and Japji repeated it with other artists over the course of time. So it was lots of fun. But it was just it was just a design project. I was just inspired to do something.
What was one of the original this question that one of our fans posted? What was one of the original struggles we overcame in order to produce the first batch of Spellground playmats?
Dealing with Jody, quite honestly, and also I always, as a screen print designer, as an artist, I always push the limits of what screen printing can do in terms of fine line work. If you look at Spellgrounds, you see there's a lot of fine line work. And that is challenging when you're pushing ink through fabric, through silk. And Jody had deadline issues, and it was tough getting it just right, getting the right squeegee feel and all that kind of stuff. So it was really getting the right screen printer was the biggest challenge, and I had a great deal of confidence in what the design was like. I knew that it would work, but we just needed to find a screen printer who was capable of doing that. And we kicked around the idea of multiple colors, and I said, no, registration is going to be an issue. Let's keep it simple. It keeps costs down. Again, I knew screen printing pretty well, so that was a struggle. To me, that was the biggest struggle. And there was probably Japji was getting the fabric, and that turned out to be a challenge as well. Certainly, I mean, the first mats we did, we hand cut with scissors. It was crazy. It was crazy. Version one fabric is like designed for playmats. It was so perfect. It was washable. It took the ink really well. You could crumple it up, and then it would maintain its integrity. It was great stuff, and that's why to this day, if you get a V1 Spellground, you're in great shape because they're really cool. And Japji and I both have V1 mats that have been signed by other artists. You take. I was fortunate enough to speak at Comic-Con in San Diego a number of times, and frequently would meet artists who I looked up to. They were magic card artists, Therese Nielsen and Todd Lockwood and R.K. Post, these wonderful people, Darren Bader, and so I'd have them sign the mats, and Sharpies work great, and they're permanent on V1 fabric. So that was always lots of fun. In fact, my favorite piece of art on that particular mat, other than the Richard Garfield and Peter Adkison signatures, Richard Garfield put right above the library icon, Richard Garfield plus creature here +1+1. So that was really fun. But then also Pete Ventners, who did the Goblins, did it twice. Once in the 90s, in 94, and then again in 2006, he did another one. So I've got two Goblins, iconic Pete Ventnor Goblins, right above a Phil Folio signature. So it's very cool. You first introduced the mats at DundraCon. It was it was tight deadline. We had, I forget exactly how many, but we didn't have a booth. We were going to sell them at one of they had a magic event or something. Is again, my memory is a little hazy on this, but we sold them out. It was like instant hit. People wanted them, and we brought. I don't know.
Was it because we put an Arabian Nights pack in each mat?
Oh, that's right. We put an Arabian. Yeah. Well, yeah, they were cheap. Yes, I do remember that. We had marketing ploys. Instead of buy one get one free, it was more like the Arabian Nights pack. This was before, again, the secondary market had exploded. So speaking of secondary markets, at the first Manifest, for instance, we auctioned off. I got to be the auctioneer for a sheet of, the plastic card sheets that had on one side it had the power. We had, it was 9 Mox Jets, black, and then on the other side were all the really good black cards. And so it was like, the Lich and, all the black power cards that are valued now. and we sold it for a couple $100, and we thought, oh man, this is crazy! Look at all this money here. It's like 300-400, something like that. It was, but and of course, any of those individual cards worth skyrocketing. But
any idea what that each of those Mox Jet would be worth right now?
Oh, a Mox Jet now would be worth probably. I know it's probably in the it's over $1,000. I know. Maybe 10,000. I have no idea. I don't have one anymore. I don't have any Moxes. It's a frequent question. Do you play Magic? Yes. And then do you have any of the old cards? No. Sold them a long time ago. Yeah, we did a number of different formats of mats. There was let's see. Oh, there was a giveaway piece that we did. We had designed. It had 4 figures around a table, talking about Magic, and including a kind of a fighter, talking about how. I'm going to bluff this guy who thinks he's going to have a counter spell and stuff like that. So that was a fun one. That's about yay big, like a personal mat. And that was kind of a giveaway. With buying a mat, you got this little giveaway piece. There was another one we did with a dragon holding a platter, and the platter was the center design, the Wanga. And that included... there was a price list of the mats available at the time. Was that mat? That was fun. The Wyvern was dragons. That was a single player mat, and that had a bunch of dragons on it. We did one for Ultimate Combat, which is a collectible card game that came out. The designer was here in San Francisco. So we did, in the center were 2 dragons, Oriental style dragons. And then that was my first and only time up until the present day that I did the work digitally. I actually designed some of those in a program called Painter, Corel Painter. The islands were done in Painter. It's the only time I did that until the present day. The mat we did for the 25th anniversary is the next time I used digital, but all the other ones were not. Then my favorite mat is the one with the poisonous plants. That one, I did a lot of research, and it brought back memories of looking at Audubon books and bird watching books and stuff. So that was my favorite, is the poisonous plants one. An accurate representation of all these poisonous plants, of poison ivy and pitcher plants, and et cetera, et cetera. But then the framing element where the vines turned into these 2 skull-like monsters, and that was Japji and me. So that was a real fun one. That was a one-person map, and I had a lot of fun with that one. That was the one that where I was specifically trying to do a specific kind of art. Otherwise, all the other ones were just pure imagination. So it was perhaps the most challenging up until the one that we just did.
So tell us about the one you just did.
Okay, the 25-year anniversary. Japji and I kicked around a lot of ideas as to what it might look like. And I had recently done a series of drawings, illustrations, watercolors of dragons. And so I took those watercolors and did some Photoshop magic with them, taking out the color, did some line work, and then used those as reference images, and drew a lot of different dragons, in incorporating dragons into a border, using some of the ideas that we've used before on the Wyvern and the Elite, kind of playing with scale, some really up close, some far away, but also taking some of the iconic things that harken back to the first Spellground, and that is it's a 2-player, so having the 2 play areas and a dividing line in the center, But I did a more elaborate centerpiece. The Wanga was very stylized. It looks kind of like a ninja throwing star, but it's framed by 4 dragons in a Celtic knot. Um, so that was lots of fun. The library got a makeover. I took photos of a pile of library books in my living room and used that as a reference image. And then there's a little cute dragon, if you look closely on the wyvern. And so I imagined that dragon, kind of a demonic little guy, is snuck into the library where all the big dragons normally go, and he's unrolling a scroll and reading that. So it was kind of a fun little piece. And let's see, that was just lots of dragons, lots of different dragons, and lots of different versions. I haven't counted them yet, but my guess is there's over 20 dragons on the new mat. On the Scaly Skies.
So the re-release of the Wyvern includes the original dragon that was in the middle. Do you want to talk about that at all? Just the original design of the Wyvern?
Oh yeah. When you're playing cards, of course, the cards are covering up the design. So and we decided. It became clear right away that in the original mats, the library and the graveyard weren't necessarily where people would play the library and the graveyard of their cards. So we agreed that it was better if the design was not all over the map, but there were big open areas. And so there was a dragon in the center of the wyvern that was kind of in the way. So I guess in the re-release, it's back.
I was happy to discover that. It's like, oh my God, there's the original art. It was like the original art of the hand sketch of the wyvern.
Yeah.
And I was like, there's that dragon in the middle. Wow.
And of course, that's the thing is originally, except for the Ultimate Combat mat, the tatami, all the drawings were pen and ink that I did. And today, I do draw with pen and ink, but for the Scaly Skies, a lot of those are the pen and ink renderings are then digitized, scanned, and then I finish them in Photoshop. So, yeah.
So, do you find that you're a little bit of a celebrity now? Sometimes when you play,
Oh yeah.
So, what's it like being like a celebrity of the famous Spellground mats?
Oh yeah, it's actually amusing. Last year at KublaCon, one of my buddies that I commuted with before I retired was there, and when I was greeted by the organizer as, oh wow, Jeff Brain, could you sign my mat? So my buddy Ken was saying, what's going on? It's like, well, I'm some minor notoriety, and so yes, there is that when I'm at conventions or something, I put out my original Spellground, and it becomes known that I'm the original artist. Yes, people will ask me to sign mats and so forth. My kids get a kick out of that when I take them to gaming conventions.
I mean, there's not a lot of things that last 25 years, and you've had that original Spellground 25 years.
Yes, and still use it. Well, that's again, good product. What the Spellgrounds did, and Khalsa Brain Games did, is it allowed me as a teacher to actually parlay that into doing some articles for Dragon Magazine, or the Magic the Gathering magazine, the Duelist. So I wrote a couple of articles, one about Magic in the Bay Area, and we still run into Richard Thomas, and his daughter was a little child, and now she's got a PhD. So again, some things, and she still plays Magic. Richard still plays Magic. Japji still plays Magic, I think once in a blue moon. But I play Magic a lot, and so the reason my Magic career has rejuvenated is some of my students were middle school students were looking at back issues of the Duelist and ran across an article that I had written, and they came to me. This is 4 years ago or 5 years ago. Mr. Brain, did you write this article? Is this you? Do you play games? Would you be a sponsor for a Magic club? And so, of course, yeah, cat was out of the bag. So yes, I sponsored a Magic club at the middle school, and that was a lot of fun. And that was one of when I announced my retirement in February a year ago, that June would be it. That was the hardest part, was the kids who played Magic. It was a place for a lot of us marginalized gamers to get together and enjoy ourselves. And for middle school, that was pretty important. So, yeah. And I still play Magic. I play a lot of Commander, EDH. One of my sons is an avid Magic player, and his friends are, so we'll host on occasion 6 college kids, or 5 college kids and me, playing EDH and scarfing down hot dogs and soda while playing cards on Spellgrounds. Yeah, Magic was really a wonderful thing. The Khalsa Brain Games led to, one thing led to another in just very strange ways. Wizards of the Coast had me speak in Philadelphia. I speak at Comic-Con about using games and cartooning and so forth in the classroom, and Magic has always been part of that. So I still play to this day. Japji is a genius marketer. He's managed to parlay what we designed in a coffee shop on Haight Street, Coffee Zone, into an empire. So it's pretty cool, and it's fun to still be a part of that. The notoriety at conventions is always a kick, and it gives my kids a kick to see, their dad is actually somebody.